I do want to shout out the choreography in one song because I thought this was so clever.
Not stars, because there was no choreography.
Not stars, because they cut my favorite choreography. Like, anyway, I used to do it all the time, like in my bedroom.
That was really good for audio listeners only. That was really good. Hi everyone, welcome back to Off to Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we're talking about Mean Girls, the musical. Now, if you're listening to us on episode release day, you're probably like, what year is it, guys? Because this came out in 2018. But it's currently playing in Toronto. Actually, I don't know if it's currently playing in Toronto when this episode is released. But when recording, it's currently playing in Toronto. We're recording on August 1st. And also, a pre-disclaimer off the top of this episode. My brother Corey is currently in Cabaret, like sitting in the theater. So when he texts me on Broadway with Eddie Redmayne on a discounted ticket from TKTS, which like crazy. When he texts me at intermission, which should be any minute now, we will be stopping the conversation to discuss his review. Right, Steph?
Absolutely. Mean Girls is playing till August 25th in Toronto. So I actually think it'll still be playing when this comes out.
Anyway, so no, it's not 2018. It is 2024, but this show is still on the road. This is now the second touring production of Mean Girls. This is non-equity. I saw it here, it was 2022, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Which was an equity production. I also saw it on Broadway. I believe I saw it in previews, but like pretty close to opening. And it's currently playing in the West End. I don't think it's playing anywhere else right now. And then we also, of course, know that there was a movie musical adaptation of the same name in the movie.
Yes. In the original movie, of course.
Should we do what we normally do of like, what's your relationship to Mean Girls? Or it's pretty obvious.
No, I think we should. I'll start because, you know, we are girls of a specific age where Mean Girls was kind of, let's say, like a formative movie growing up. I don't know, it came out in 2004, so I was like 11. I don't really remember the first time I ever saw it. I don't remember a time before knowing Mean Girls.
Same.
And knowing the quotes and like having your friends quote Mean Girls all the time and just being like ubiquitous pop culture references. It's a movie that really spoke to girls in our generation and probably maybe a little bit older. So it's not something I had to ever be introduced to. It was always just something I was familiar with. And I know that they were always talking about turning it into a musical, but then they actually did it, which is this. And for me, my first time seeing the musical was this Toronto tour this month. That was my first time seeing it. But I did know the cast recording pretty well, and I had seen many videos, which will be discussed later. Yeah. Tara, what was your relationship to Mean Girls?
Same as you. Like, I would have been 10 when that first movie came out. It is currently the 20th anniversary of Mean Girls, which I think, like, they're kind of promoting that on the tour. I know, like, when I saw an email about it, they were saying that it's the 20th anniversary. And I had heard, I think, same as you, that they were, like, making this into a musical, and it was like, oh, this is something I gotta see because I love this movie. I've seen this movie every time. It's one of those things that, like, for anybody that still has cable, like, whenever Mean Girls was on TV, I was watching it. Like, there was no way that I wasn't watching it. It's also, I agree that it's, like, for the girls, but, like, my brothers and I also obsessed with Mean Girls. Like, they still will quote things to me all the time. Like, "She doesn't even go here" is a quote that is used regularly. So I've seen that movie, like, a million times and never gets old. I think it's so well done. And for that, I think I was always hesitant on what an adaptation would look like. I think we can say this for, like, many things that have been adapted in the past. That, like, why, if you're not going to change something completely, but you're also not going to do a remake, like, you're kind of in this, like, weird in-between bubble, which we'll get to more of that later. But I bought tickets pretty far in advance to see it pre-Broadway. I went with my mom. Or sorry, not pre-Broadway, previews on Broadway. And we also saw Frozen that trip. What else did I see that trip? I don't even know.
Did you see SpongeBob that trip?
Yes. Wow. Multiple Best Musical nominees.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't love this musical. I think there's many reasons why I don't love this musical. Seeing the movie iteration of it, I really don't like that movie. I think it makes it like worse than it already maybe is. I do think a lot of my initial opinions on this show are based on that Broadway performance, and I had one of the worst audiences in a theater because everybody was like trying to say the movie quotes with the characters. Really, it was like so rowdy in there. Everyone was like drinking kind of heavily, and it like wasn't a good audience experience. I was also in the mezzanine, so like maybe that's part of it too. Wow, at the August Wilson, which has been completely transformed for Cabaret.
For Cabaret. Wow.
Fully in the round. Look at that. This full circle moment. But then seeing it here on tour again, I really didn't like it. And that had nothing to do with the story, because I already knew the story. The cast, unfortunately, wasn't very good the time that it came here. And that was kind of like the overarching critique from like everybody that saw it. So when it came back, I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Lindsay Heather Pierce? Did you see Lindsay Heather Pierce?
No, she was out that day.
Oh.
Yeah,
but you did see. Tragic. Did you see Danielle Wade? Did you see Danielle Wade?
No, Danielle never came to Toronto.
She did the tour though.
She did the tour, but I think she stopped right before Toronto, which is crazy because why? I wish I saw Danielle Wade. That would have probably made the experience so much better. I think I saw Mary Kay Morsey do it as Janice.
Do Janice?
I'm pretty confident. Who's now Elphaba on Broadway, like currently. That like Elphaba to Janice pipeline is like kind of the same as the like
it's true.
Bach to Ogie pipeline. Evan Ogie Bach pipeline. So yeah, when it came back around this time, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to go. So you got to see it for the first time, and you liked it.
I actually really did like it. I had a really good time. I had heard. Look, I'm not going to pretend I went in completely blind. I've watched a bootleg. I've watched many a bootleg of this show.
We were just saying before we started recording, this is probably my most watched Broadway bootleg for a show that I
100%.
Do not even like.
100%. I've watched this.
But like 2020 was a dark time, and we found joy.
We found joy in watching Cameron Dallas in Mean Girls the musical.
Yep. Shout
anyway,
out.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I was going into this viewing of this live stage show, of seeing it live blind, and was ready to be swept away. I had things I was looking to see, pieces of choreography I was ready to see, which were cut. I knew all the songs. I knew where we were going. I knew what costumes looked like. I knew everything. So I don't know if that made me more primed to enjoy myself or not. To be honest, I think not. But what I felt was, I felt it had really good energy. Like, I felt the energy of, maybe it was the cast, but I also feel like the energy of the script and the music kind of matched the story, or matched the characterization that they were giving. And I think that's kind of why I was like able to be taken with this show, and why I was able to have such a good time, because I felt that everything kind of like worked well together. I have critiques, obviously, but for the most part, I felt, you know, there's been criticism of the music, which I can criticize too, but I felt it conveyed the like level of maturity of the characters well, if that makes sense.
See, I completely disagree. And I think that's because the like movie, to me, we were talking about this before we started recording, and you were saying how like these songs portray like how dumb these characters are. And it's like, I agree in that sense, but that's not what it should be. Like, these girls are so smart in the movie. So like, I really feel like we dumbed them down. Not this.
Dumb necessarily. I don't mean dumb. I don't know if I said dumb, but I mean like the like, it felt almost accurate to what high school students would be saying and how they would be speaking, and it kind of like is like silly in that way a little bit. I don't think this show takes itself too seriously, which I really appreciate.
No, I agree there. I just think that like, based on the characters that have everybody already knows, like, it doesn't match that. If you were to put those songs into that movie, I don't think it fits at all. It feels very strange.
I think tonally the music and the movie are different. The musical and the movie are different.
Right, which is I think why I like struggle with it, and why I like really struggled with the movie musical version of it, because that felt like they were trying to take aspects from the original movie, take aspects from the musical, but then create this like new version. Because for anyone that's seen it, Steph hasn't seen it,
No.
but for anyone that's seen it, oh, I wonder where my poster, I have a poster somewhere here from like the movie theater. For anyone that's seen it, like the songs are completely reorchestrated for this movie. They're more like, I don't even know what kind of genre of music it is. It's almost more like EDM, which is completely a different tone from the musical. So I think where I struggle is I'm like, what are we making here? Like, what are we trying to make? If you're trying to make a remake, then like, I don't think you succeeded in making a remake. If you're trying to make a newer story of a musical, I think you kind of succeeded, but then you can't have these like big lines. And even to like your text that you sent me yesterday of like, they didn't say that his hair looks sexy pushed back. I'm like, but that's such a pivotal moment. Like, why would you cut? It's also 100% in the Broadway version. So I'm like, why would you cut this for tour?
My thought process is it's based on who the actor playing Aaron is. Like, the
but
actor
there's no
playing
way,
Aaron.
because the guy that I saw play Aaron was a black man who had a buzz cut. So they still said, tell him his hair looks sexy pushed back.
This guy, he had like curly hair. So I think they were just like not trying to push it back. They said, tell him, are his eyes gray or are they green? That was what they asked instead. And I was like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, not to like really get into why, you know, tell him his hair looks sexy pushed back works, is like, I think because like, yeah, tell him he looks hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus like, does he have gray or green eyes? No one cares. But I do think it's just dependent on the actor who plays it. The Regina was blonde. Was not blonde the other night. She just had brown hair,
which I also think is a choice because she's wearing a wig, so it could be any color.
I know, and sometimes again, it's might be dependent on the actor playing them, what looks best with their skin tone, and maybe they're at a point where they are trying to not be so beholden to the movie versions of these characters and just trying to create new characters, but let the actors make them more their own, as opposed to just doing a carbon copy of, you know, Rachel McAdams and Lindsay Lohan. So it didn't bother me that she wasn't blonde, but from what I've heard, the only time I've seen it, is that there's lots of references to her being blonde, and there were obviously no references to her being blonde in the musical the other night.
Yeah. So I think just from like my main, I mean, I have many issues with the show, but I think my main issue is I'm like, I struggle with what they try to be here, because it's too much of a remake and not enough original to kind of like stray, which I guess, like, not to bring up the musical that you hate so much, but like Back to the Future, just as like a direct comparison here, that was like a carbon copy of the movie.
Yeah.
So I can understand, like, I understand your frustrations, but I also understand why people love it, because they're like, oh, that's a property that I already know everything about. So it's like, I'm like, Tina, you tried something here, but I feel like you didn't push it far enough. I also personally think the lyrics are like trash, but that's a whole other story.
They didn't bother me,
but maybe because you knew them. Maybe because you knew them. It's true.
Maybe because I did know them and I was familiar with them, and I was just kind of like along for the ride. It is an interesting comparison to Back to the Future, because what I was saying the other day is that Mean Girls, the original movie, is already a satire of this like clique culture. It was based on a book, but that book was a self-help book for parents. Like, Tina mined and created this original story that is a satire already, and then the musical almost feels like a satire of a satire, so it's like too much on top. And what I'll say about Back to the Future is I don't know the right person to give credit to, but I saw on TikTok saying that Back to the Future the musical almost felt like a parody of the Back to the Future movie, and I was like, oh yes, I think you've captured what like didn't work for me, is that it doesn't feel like authentic. It feels like they're making fun of almost the source material. And in this one, maybe it works. Like, I'm not here saying that Mean Girls is a good musical, but what I'm saying is that I like had a better time in the audience of this musical. Maybe because I was like primed for this, like the satire, and primed for kind of like the over the topness in some ways. and maybe that satire worked for me, because when I was saying it before I even saw it, I was like, oh, maybe that's why it doesn't work, the like satire on top of satire, but maybe that's actually why it kind of does work. I don't know.
Yeah, I like, again, I don't like, many people that see this have like a great time, but I think there's always that like,
and I've recommended it to people before I even saw it.
Yeah. But it's kind of just like, I don't know. It's hard to say like what I actually feel about it, because I think the other thing too is that the last time, and I've said this before on the podcast and I'll continue to say it, a movie has been made into a musical that was like super successful for me was Legally Blonde. And when you put these two shows next to each other, that one is like far superior to me, because I just think that book is so smart. And they did what I think I was hoping for with Mean Girls, is like stray a little bit further off the source material.
This doesn't stray very much at all, I don't think. It doesn't,
but then
loyal.
It like, I don't know, I think it really dumbs. In the movie, Karen is so dumb, and it's like infuriating how dumb she is. Like, it makes me so mad.
Oh, in the new movie? In the
new movie. Because like Amanda Seyfried is dumb, but like not that dumb. Like, she still has like moments where she's like checked in and understands what's going on. But in this new version, it's just like, it's so like offensive to me how dumb they made her.
I do think it's hard
she's like a person of color, which makes it even worse. Like, it's like, oh, you chose the one girl to make this dumb, but like, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that.
I do think it is hard to, let's say, like recreate magic. Like
100%.
The original movie, you know, the characterization, the performances that are being given in that movie are just kind of like nailing it. And then when you try to recreate something like that through a musical, through a movie musical, no matter what you do, it's always going to be one compared to what was done previously. Yeah. But also, it's hard to recapture that exact like chemistry that made it like walk the tightrope that the performances walked in that first movie. And it's hard to not go too much one way or too much another way. And also, I find a lot in adaptations that when you see something that was successful, or let's say like season 2 of a TV show, even for like a different comparison, if season 1 was really successful, a lot of times the writers might take the wrong things to expand upon in the next season, right? And sometimes I find that when you're adapting something or remaking something, a character is so beloved, and then a performer or a writer will take something with that character and magnify it, but missing like the actual reason why that character worked so well. And I think maybe that's a little bit of what happened with like Karen and some of these characters as well, just like missing what was the like magic piece.
A question for you. I don't even know if you'll, because I haven't even thought about this. I'm just asking you right now. But like, was Tina Fey working on this project a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think?
Well, one, I don't think anyone else would be able to do this. Like, I think her involvement is integral.
Was bringing on her husband a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, they are frequent collaborators, and he did write the music for this. I like, the music does not bother me. He did not write the lyrics, which are like kind of your biggest gripe.
It's Nell Benjamin, which is like, she's done stuff that didn't she write some Legally Blonde?
Didn't she write Legally Blonde? Didn't she write Legally Blonde lyrics?
She did with like Larry O'Keefe, but like it just feels so different to me.
It is so different. No, tonally
but
they're
also,
very different
like,
shows.
In terms of that in general, like the show is a little smarter in general. Like, all of the characters in Legally Blonde are a little like, first of all, they're older.
Yeah, like they're in law school.
They're older, so it like makes a difference for sure. Yeah, that's maybe the thing. Maybe it's too young sounding for me.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why I like.
Because the two of them also worked on Heathers, which I love. Heathers, but that's
which is also high school.
But it's the same age. But I think Heathers, there's like a darker tone to that, right?
Well, Nell Benjamin and Larry O'Keefe. Yeah, no, it is. Did Nell Benjamin do Heathers? I don't think she did. I think it was just Larry O'Keefe.
Oh, because I remember when I was looking at. Oh, maybe you're right. Yeah, she didn't.
But because Heathers has really great lyrics. But in my opinion.
Just to compare, like, it's the same time period, but like, to me, that one is so much more well done
both high school
than this. So yeah, I don't know. I think you're right that like Tina is probably the only person. I only bring this up because like we were just talking about how like the Tony Awards that season was a weird
really
year.
Season.
That was, you know where we were for that season? We were at the Musical Stage Company party.
Yes, at Shoeless Joe's, which is closed now.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. to Shoeless Joe's.
But
what's down there now? Is it another bar or is it like a gym?
Sure. But like Mean Girls was nominated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Tony Awards, and they won 0.
Wow.
And the one that was the biggest, I guess, like shock of the night was like they never previously televised Book of a Musical, and they specifically televised Book of a Musical because everyone thought that Tina Fey was going to win, and then she lost. And did The Band's Visit win Best Book? Did we look that up?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't SpongeBob and it wasn't Frozen.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with that. Like, seeing all of those shows that season, like...
Not SpongeBob?
SpongeBob is, like, another show that's young, but I think those lyrics are really good. And you know why? Because multiple people worked on that. It was a combination, right? It was, like, all of those different people. Yeah, I don't know.
Not Frozen, obviously, but
no, not Frozen. But sometimes I'm like, why wreck something that's already great? But then like we wouldn't have multiple versions of any like musical out there. Like half of the musicals that we've seen have been like adaptations from something.
Adapted from movies.
More
or
than
books
half,
or
probably like
anything.
80% of
So
the
many.
musicals we've seen.
Most are adapted from at least something.
I think we took it too far by doing this movie musical version. We should have stopped when we were like kind of
we don't need to readapt it back. We don't need to complete the circle.
Exactly. But yeah, that's like, and then my other like main critiques is I'm very confused on what time period we're in, which I've said this before. I think the costuming is really dated, and I'm not sure what year it's dated to because they weren't even wearing wedge sneakers in the movie that came out in 2004.
It is really interesting, and I find this a lot, and we actually talked about this when we talked about Hadestown, is that sometimes with costuming, you can see the time period that something was produced in. And with Hadestown, like, everyone is wearing a skinny jean, and in Mean Girls, everyone is wearing a skinny jean. And like, I'm not even wearing a skinny jean anymore. You know what I mean?
Skinny jeans were thrown out. Sorry, they're probably wearing a jegging. They're wearing a jegging.
They're so tight around that ankle. They're so tight around that ankle. And the moment I noticed it the most is during Stop at the top of Act 2. 2 male ensemble members are dressed as women to be in the ensemble. And they are in the skinniest jeans I've ever seen. And a crop top, obviously. And then a horrible wig. Truly the worst wigs I've ever seen the other night. Like, I've never seen a worse wig than what I saw the other night. And that's why I noticed it on the most, because these, like, male bodies in skinny, ripped jeans. So bad. At one point, Regina wears this, like, business short. And then like a silk blouse.
It's during Revenge Party.
And then like a blazer. Yeah. And then like a sock booty. It was so weird.
Yeah.
So
weird.
Weird.
That's the thing. Like, you know, there's the iconic lines from the movie of like, Regina George bought army pants and flip-flops, so I'm going to wear army pants and flip-flops. I'm like, this woman's supposed to be like a fashion icon, and you're putting her in these horrible outfits. The movie musical version also put her in bad outfits, but at least they were shopping at Revolve. Like, we're talking 2024.
2024. I do think there is something to, when you watch, let's say, like Disney Channel shows, and everyone's in 27 like layers of clothing, like so much clothing, there's something timeless to that. Even if it's wacky that no one would actually wear, it's so outside of actual fashion that you kind of, it feels like not of a specific period.
It's giving Hannah Montana.
It's giving Hannah Montana, and I wish this gave Hannah Montana a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I want this to give Lizzie McGuire just a little bit more.
Yes.
Like let's put a belt over a layered top. I don't know. Let's do something funkier. I think the best Regina outfit, the best Regina outfit is that like white outfit that you meet her in. I think that works.
Yes.
I think the sneaker wedges are really a practical choice to give them height while also have them be in a sneaker.
We don't need it.
But no, I don't know why we're on a sneaker wedge. It was a lot of sock booties the other night, which I don't know if we're in the original or not. A lot of sock booties.
It's also because like the guys aren't as in like extremely noticeable clothing. They're more like dressed for high school. Like Erin wears a t-shirt and jeans, right? So like, why can't the girls wear a t-shirt and jeans?
I know. They want it to feel like a little elevated. I like Karen's like rainbow skirt and then jean jacket moment where she like rips the sleeves off.
Best.
That cracked me up, actually. That really got me.
No, I think the worst Regina outfit is the cold shoulder world burn moment.
Oh, no, sorry, the silk blouse is worse. In the silk blouse, she wears for 10 seconds, and yet I cannot get it out of my mind. The cold shoulder top is fine.
Well, in the version I've seen, Katie, tell him his hair looks sexy, pushback. But in your version, tell him his eyes green or gray
or gray. I was like, what? Who cares?
Yeah.
His eyes are green or gray.
I mean, in terms of music, I'm not going to sit here and say that I hate all of the music, because there are songs that I do like. I think Stupid with Love is a great song. I think World Burn is a great song. And if you want to hear what I'm talking about with the movie musical, like, listen to that version, because it's completely different. It's reorchestrated like electronically, and I don't really care for it. Someone Gets Hurt, great song, great scene. So like there are moments, but like, whose house is this? Bye. It's
fun. To me, the biggest cut, and I'm actually shocked it's not cut for the tour, is Stop. I really think Stop
it's cut in the West End.
Good. Not only is it
but
a bad song, it's so long, it's so boring. I'm losing it.
Do you know what happens with Stop in the West End? They have this curtain call moment that's kind of like a mega mix, and they like have Damien like tap around for a bit with like the instrumental to stop. So I was like, that's fun.
They just need to kill some time, it sounds like, to maybe do a costume change, give people like a rest.
I also absolutely hate every iteration of What's Wrong With Me. Like, hate. I think it's so bad. Like, so bad.
I don't necessarily love the song, but I really like the like exploration of the character of Gretchen, like, through that song. So for me, okay, so what I think is actually strongest about this musical, and I wish they did more, is the African imagery that Katie brings into school, and comparing high school to like what life was like in Africa,
which is very like forward in the original movie. Like they do that a lot in the movie. Every time Katie's like in her mind, there's the jungle like fight scene,
and they like the lion roars and stuff, and it starts off strong with It Roars, and then I think the peak of that moment is Apex Predator, which is probably my favorite song from the show, Apex Predator. And what Gretchen is doing, the characterization of Gretchen, which I think comes probably from the script, but also I think a lot from Ashley Park, who was the original Gretchen, this like bird movement she's doing throughout the show. Anytime she's stressed, she like turns into a bird, and she has bird imagery on her clothing, like almost like she's a parrot or something. I don't know. And I think that kind of like high concept works the best for me in the show, and I'm sad that you lose it in Act 2. Like, I don't think it's really anywhere in Act 2 except for Gretchen, being a bird a little bit.
They're like ka 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 ka. I'm like, stop.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's funny. I think it works. Like, I think that little thing works. I wish maybe there was a little bit more of that comparison of high school to like almost like a Lord of the Flies kind of like animalistic behavior. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is strongest in the show.
It's really interesting because in the movie musical, Gretchen feels like she doesn't even belong in that friend group, because we get like nothing from her, which was like so disappointing to me, because it's what's her name from Love, Victor, who was Gretchen.
Phoebe Wood?
Yeah,
Phoebe Wood
and I like love her in Love, Victor. But I just felt like they kind of like had her really take a back seat. And then obviously like Hallmark Queen herself, Lacey, like she is so iconic for every single thing she did in that original movie. So I do think that the musical version of Gretchen is like quite different from what Lacey was doing in the movie. But yeah, Gretchen is such a big part of like the main movie and the movie and the musical. So to like have her take a backseat in the movie musical was like a weird choice for me. What about Katie? Let's talk about Katie. Like, how is she as our like main character, like narrator of the show?
She's really interesting, and as I was watching it the other night, I found myself thinking a lot about Lindsay Lohan and kind of the like really wonderful acting she brought to that role.
So
like
good.
the like we really took her for granted. Like, I hope she's okay.
She's filming Freaky Friday 2 right
now.
No,
I know. I love Freaky Friday. She's like really just this kind of like wide-eyed innocence that she is playing to everything in that movie. And you really understand how she's able to like kind of fall into being the leader of the plastics almost by the end, and kind of turning into it before she even realized what was happening. And from the original Broadway cast, I think Erica also does a pretty similar thing. Like, I think she really nails it as well. I liked the Katie we had the other night. What was her name? She's so tiny. Natalie Shaw. She was super cute. I think the characterization of Katie is really interesting. I like her as our narrator. I do think maybe what's underdeveloped is like the friendship with Janice and Damien. I wish
in the original movie, I feel like it's a pretty like big side story. Like, she's always hanging out with them to take down Regina. Yeah.
The only times we see it, we never see it in the musical, them really hanging out and being friends. So you don't quite understand, I guess, Janice's hurt.
Right.
At the end, where she'd painted this picture of them as like three best friends, and you're like, we've only seen Katie hang out with these other girls. Like, she's not hanging out with you. Yeah. And I understand, musicals are a juggling act, and there's a lot you have to put in. But yeah, I think like maybe that characterization, I think giving her more time with Janice and Damien to like bond, instead of just Damien singing at her, which is, I feel like, what happens in a lot of the scenes that they're in together. Yes. He's doing great. He's having fun. But he just like kind of sings at her, and she's kind of like, oh. Maybe you would understand this kind of like pull she's feeling in multiple directions, and would give her a little more depth, because we really only see her with the plastics.
Yeah, it's very true. That is also, I would say, a critique of the movie musical, because if you think back to the original movie, like every time they're in, from that opening like scene when she meets them, and then they are in, I think, math class together, and they tell her like, don't sit there, don't sit here. And then like, as we go on, as she meets the plastics, like every single time we're in a classroom setting with the three of them, they're talking to each other. Whereas I feel like that's a missed opportunity in the musical. One of my other main issues with the musical and the movie musical is I don't think it's mean enough. And I think it's very like juvenile. And the comments that are made, like, they're not mean. They're just like, I don't even know. They're not even like insults. Whereas like
a little catty.
Yeah. Whereas like if you watch that 2004 movie, like Rachel McAdams is mean. She is like so good in that. The way that she talks to Gretchen, mean. And I feel like I was hoping that we would have got that out of Renee in the movie, because I think Renee has that like sassy attitude.
The edge.
We've seen it in interviews. We've seen it all the time. But I just don't think there's enough in this script for the character to actually be like, the show is called Mean Girls. No one is mean in this show. So that's like a side thing.
It's a lot of like tell, don't show. Like they're telling you Regina's the meanest. But it's like, I want to see it.
Which
I want to see
I think
her
was a critique of Tina for us. It was a lot of tell, don't show. When we saw Tina, it was like, okay, they're telling us that she's singing at all these events, but it's like, okay, show me. Like, I want to see it. So, like, I want to hear Regina say, this girl is a fugly skank. Like, I want to see that, because that was, like, that scene in the movie is iconic. Like, it's such a big moment, but I feel like it just hasn't. And I don't know, maybe that's because they wanted it to be more of, like, a family friend. It's not family friendly. They're like having sex in a lion costume. Like, no. I don't know what to say.
That's like the other thing. I actually do need to talk about this, but I turned to Shara in intermission. I went with Shara. But we had girls' night out without Tara. But I turned to her and I was like, look, like, I'm an adult, but I thought some of the sexual stuff was a bit much and just a little bit like jarring. Particularly the mascot was crazy to me. In Act 1, I was like, oh, well, they're in the costume. Like, I don't know.
Did you not know that before you went?
No, I did know it. I've seen the movie, but like, I don't know if that's in the movie. But
no, in the movie, they're just in the gym closet.
No, I've seen it, but to see the mascot suit with the giant belly, like, bouncing was a bit much for me.
That's the thing. I'm like, you take this, like, PG, what's Mean Girls, like PG-13 the movie? Maybe. I don't even know. Yeah, probably PG-13. Then you sanitize it into this like PG musical, but then you have this like weird sex scene that like brings the rating back up.
there's other sexual, let's say, like, movements. I sound like such a prude talking about this. I am not, but like, I was just, some of the stuff I was like,
she loves Regency. She loves royals. That's sexy to her. This is not sexy.
No, but even, I can't remember what
no, I agree.
What dance number it was where they're just like thrusting, and I'm just like,
it's in the opening number when they,
it might be like, where do you belong?
When she says, what does she say about the Chihuahua? And then they're like humping her leg.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I was just like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I do feel like some of the humor is maybe toned down because it has become this like movie that young girls have really loved, and this like story that young girls really loved. But then there's other things that I'm like, oh, that doesn't really jive with that. The thing that really bothered me was honestly the fat suit they put Regina in for a lot of Act 1 and Act 2. Specifically when her thong is out and she's like waving her butt towards the audience. I thought that was really unnecessary and really uncomfortable and upsetting to me.
I want to talk about this for like a minute because like post COVID, post Mean Girls, pre movie musical, Renee was pretty vocal about how her time in Mean Girls was and how she would often speak to the producers for things like costumes and how she was, there's a lyric in the show that says, I never weigh more than 115. That lyric was cut for the movie musical because Renee was playing Regina in the movie musical.
Yeah.
But
it was in the show the other night that I saw.
Yeah, it's still in, and also like costume wise, like Renee wears a skirt in the opening number. She doesn't wear the skinny jeans. She wears a skirt in the someone gets hurt. She doesn't wear the like bunny bodysuit.
She has like a skirt over the bodysuit almost.
And that was her choice. Like she asked to be more covered. We thought like when she was doing it, we were like, oh, this girl's like 17 years old. Like she can't be like wearing these costumes.
Yeah, you know, you
stage.
see this all the time. There's something kind of, I do think actors especially like do have some control of their costumes, but there is something too. I remember when I saw like the curtain call videos for Funny Girl, and at the end Beanie would come out in this like kind of like caftan almost. Yes. And then when Leah started doing it, she's in like a spaghetti strap little dress. And as an audience member who doesn't really know much about the conversations between costume designers and stage managers and whoever, it's hard not to think, oh, they covered the fat girl and they let the skinny girl, you know, wear the cute tiny dress. And what actually I think found out about Funny Girl was that, you know, they each got to like kind of work with costume designers and choose what they wanted to wear, what they were comfortable in.
But as an
it's
audience
hard not
member,
to notice
it
a pattern. As an audience member, I don't know. And it's also hard not to notice a pattern of who is being more covered and who is not being covered.
Yeah.
Especially when costumes do seem to be like standardized.
Right. And then like Renee was just like going on to say that like there were many times that she was made very uncomfortable of like, well, we have to do this because like you won't wear this. And it's like, no, she's doing that because she doesn't feel comfortable in the costumes and she's playing a leading woman on Broadway. So like, but she had, it was a discussion of like, would she even go back into the Mean Girls like franchise for this movie because of the issues that she had on stage. And she many times was like, this has nothing to do with Tina. This has nothing to do with like Lorne Michaels because he was a big part of all of this as well. And the answer was that she went back because she felt like she wanted to close that chapter because obviously the pandemic like affected that chapter and it was going to be changed. It's just interesting because I think like the main takeaway that I had from like the multiple interviews that she did was that like she's kind of scarred from that experience and I'm not sure that she would do theater again because of like she was saying like she would do 2 show days and she wouldn't eat at all because she needed to fit into her costumes. I think it's hard. It's also so hard when you're like 17, 18 years old when like all you're thinking about is like the way that you look and now everybody is looking at you on this very public platform and you also have to like keep up this like social media and everything. So I really like feel for her as such a young, not even woman, like she was a girl like in such a big production. So it's very interesting.
It was a formative time for her and like a formative career moment for her and so early in her career. And obviously now she's kind of pivoted.
Oh yeah, like look what she wears now, right? Like the baggiest clothes, like her style has completely changed. Yeah.
It is funny. We were watching like them at Google and she's in like a pink blazer.
She would never.
I just can't even imagine her wearing this pink blazer now.
That's the crazy thing. It's like, who is that girl? Like, right? Like she almost was always in Regina while she was playing Regina. Like she never really like branched out. I remember her saying too of like the lashes and the liner. I'm like, this girl goes on stage with like her beautiful bare face and like looks amazing. So like it was but that's also like, that's acting, right? Like you play a character. But I think, yeah, like doing that movie like closed, I think, kind of a traumatizing chapter for her. But she did say that like Tina was always someone that was like very, very supportive of her and wanted to look out for her, and also was like, I know you want to do music, but like I want you to do this first.
And to be fair, like let's say that the writers or directors of a show are not the ones doing the everyday operations day in and
they're
day
not there.
out of a musical, and just are not involved in that same way.
Yeah. Should we talk
I
about
think we have one.
Go ahead.
No, I think we have really one thing that we really need to address in this episode.
Yeah.
And it's the projections.
Oh my God, yes. But I was going to say, should we talk about stunt casting first, and then we'll talk about equity versus non-equity?
Okay, sure. Let's go.
Okay. I only want to say stunt casting. There's like two things here. Obviously, you've heard us talk about on this podcast over the course of the last 5 years that we saw the day that Cameron Dallas was going into Mean Girls, because we saw
like
that
starting rehearsals,
walking on the street with his Mean Girls binders. Like, I think that's a YouTuber. Turns out it was. And I feel like, I mean, stunt casting had always existed, but that was the first time that I was like, why are they doing it for a show that's already like popular? Which then leads me to think of like Moulin Rouge's like stunt casting situation literally currently with like JoJo as Satine. And like, did he sell tickets? I don't even know.
That's a really good question. I don't know if he sold tickets. That's a really good question. Obviously, like, it sold us.
Oh, 100%. In the pandemic, it's the only thing I watched.
We're just like watching bootlegs of
the
him.
good, the bad, and the ugly.
Couldn't find one on YouTube today. Could not find one on YouTube today. It was devastating. I like to watch him do the choreography in the finale.
But the real stunt casting, because I don't even know if it was stunt casting at the time, and like she only did 3 performances. But like, think of, what year was this? It was 2020, right? Or was it 2020? Think back to 2020. And erase all of the radio that you've listened to really in the last like 6 months. And just go back to that time and think that they're bringing on this girl named Sabrina Carpenter. Now, Steph always a fan because she watched Girl Meets World.
I did. I knew who she was.
To play Katie, who's literally the tiniest person I've ever seen like on a stage. Those pictures are comedy because she's so small. And starring alongside her is Renee Rapp. Now, fast forward 4 years later, these two girls, pop stars. Like, Renee,
Coachella.
literally, at time of record, is in Montreal at Osheaga this weekend. We're talking about, like, Sabrina, like, basically headlining Coachella, like, on tour with Taylor Swift. Having the greatest, like, month, like 4 weeks maybe of her life when Espresso came out. Like, this girl is on top of every single music chart, song of the summer. And to think that you could have seen both of them in a production of Mean Girls on Broadway for 3 days only.
3 performances only.
Whoever has that playbill, like, keep it.
There are videos of the bows. I don't know if there's a full boot though.
There's not, because like, well, who would have had a camera in there for 3 days?
I don't know. The bootleg guy needs to be there night one. Like, I need to call him.
I think it was stressful because it was COVID. People were like, should we be going to the theater?
So true.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about equity versus non-equity. So the 2 times that I've seen Mean Girls, it's been equity. The current touring production is non-equity. Now, Steph, please reveal what is the biggest twist of the entire night. Well,
I don't know if this is related to equity or non-equity, but we're gonna...
It is for the purpose of this discussion.
So in this production of Mean Girls, so
also,
you had
wait,
talked
sorry,
about...
not to interrupt you, but like, does Cabaret have an intermission? Corey, where are you?
Started at 8.
Started at 7:30.
I started at 7:30. Oh, he's in Act 2. He didn't text you.
Maybe
Betrayal.
he'll give me his full thoughts.
Betrayal.
Back to this.
Basically, one thing that I had heard about from you so much that you passionately disliked about Mean Girls
Everyone's heard it.
was the projection design on Mean Girls. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't really think too much about it. And I've seen videos of it, so I kind of know what's going on. So then I'm watching the show, and it opens, they're in Kenya, and the backdrop is like a fabric scrim of like, I don't know, Lion King, Kenya, desert, whatever. And then it comes up, and it's just like a brick wall of a high school, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And then we go to the mall during Apex Predator, and another like scrim comes down. It's just like a print of a mall. It looked kind of dumb, but whatever. And I was like, I turned to Shar, I'm like, are there no projections? There were no projections. It was all practical set.
I am still beside myself about this because, again, for anyone that's listened to us since the beginning, you know that I'm a projection hater. And I'm specifically a Mean Girls projection hater because here's the thing about projections. They're very expensive, which is why I believe they're not on this tour, which is why you believe they're not on this tour. It's 100%. Very expensive to get these screens. If anyone's seen the opening curtain of Mean Girls on Broadway, you'll know that there's multiple screens with like pictures of the burn book. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, ooh, I don't know. They could use this like as a social media thing. That would be fun. But then here I am critiquing Time Period again, and they didn't use the screens for the right reasons. But in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people disagree with this, but an expensive projection or screen or whatever, to me, does not enhance... Sorry, if it's not used to enhance the set, then I don't understand why it's used at all. It should be never used to replace set. It should just be used for enhancements. And to me, to spend money on something that then diminishes what practical set is, it's a complete waste of everybody's money, and I don't think you should do it. Whereas what Steph is saying as like this scrim of the mall, which whatever, it's a scrim. I understand that because it's a tour that doesn't have a lot of money in it. But I'd rather see a scrim than a mall on a TV screen.
It was not a Broadway quality scrim. Like, if this was on Broadway, it would be terrible.
I would still rather a scrim than a TV screen.
I feel like they could have done something. Obviously, and then the escalator was practical because it, like, gets wheeled around.
Yeah, the escalator's practical on Broadway, too. The one that, like, bothers me the most is the opening, or not the opening. It's like, oh, yeah, it's during It Roars. The lockers are fake. There's no real lockers. It's just projection. I'm like, roll a locker in, guys. Like, why are we not rolling in a locker?
It was all real lockers that they rolled in, and then they like flipped them around. They had other stuff on the other side. It almost felt very like, and I mean this is a compliment, like a really high quality community theater production.
Okay, I saw the trailer that Mervish put on of this production, and I was like, it's giving regional.
It's giving regional, but like really good regional, if that makes sense. But
I'm going to say something, but I'll save it. Go ahead.
Save it. I want to say one more thing. In the same way that I feel like the lyrics being a little bit like almost rudimentary worked for the characterization, I also felt that the sets being like simple sets, like not too high tech, people like rolling things on and off, also kind of matched the high school energy of this show for me, and it really worked for me. And what it reminded me of, and this makes sense because it's the same director choreographer, like it reminded me of the set of The Prom. It really had that similar energy to the set of The Prom.
I agree with that, but that's not what most people have seen. Most people have seen TV screen, right? So like it's hard to think of anything else. Like the only thing I can think of is what I sent you guys, and it's that sexy backdrop with the skeletons and the candy that's like I don't even know. And then also
didn't have it.
Similarly in Revenge Party, it's like Katie's head wearing a party hat blowing a horn. I'm just like, guys, what are we doing? Like, this is it's so bad. It's so bad.
Random.
It's so bad. So to hear that this, and then also like the end is the bus as a projection. What did they do for
the bus comes out in the tour. Like, that was actually maybe the worst part, but
like what
the bus does come out from the back. It's obviously clearly just like a cardboard bus. It's like a flat bus.
Oh no, it's fitting Peter Camp.
Well, so the back of the stage has the door that opens that like people enter and exit from a lot. And so it opens and the lights are dimmed. So it's not full brightness bus. Like the lights are down when the bus is coming out. And then this like bus comes and then like Regina's in front of it. And she's like, and then it's like blackout, but it wasn't a full blackout. And we saw the bus like recede and then Regina have to like walk off. It was funny. Honestly, didn't mind it. Like, this is me during the bus. I was like, oh no. Because I just could not handle what was happening with the bus.
I will say, in terms of the projections, the best use of projection to me was in World Burn when she's scanning the burn book, because the screens show us the photocopies. I'm like, this is good.
Okay. Here's what they did. I don't know if this was on Broadway or not. They from the ceiling came down like a light, like a long light. And you know how photocopiers have the light that goes across? Mm-hmm. It was just like a long light that the light just like went across like a photocopier.
That didn't happen.
They had that. And then she had a photocopier in front of her that was like uplighting her. That's all they had. And then she sang. And then when she threw the papers, it was just her throwing papers. Like, she had to make it work, and she did it. Like, the papers flew.
Yeah.
In a cinematic way, in an exciting way.
Yeah, that happens on Broadway too.
No, I'm sure, but on Broadway, I know it's supported by papers flying on the screen. On the
screens. Yeah,
on the screen. She was not supported by anything. She had to do the whole thing herself.
The light strip wasn't there because there were screens behind her. So like any time that like the light of the photocopier is going off, you're seeing it go wave on all of the screens. No,
they brought
but then it also leads to like my like least favorite moment of projection is when she's like standing on the top of the lockers and then the screens are flames. Like, what are we doing? It's so bad.
She doesn't stand on top of the lockers in this one. She's just kind of like on a box.
Okay.
That they like wheel out. It was giving MJ at the end of MJ the musical. Like the toaster pot.
Yeah, we haven't
talked about, just like on a box. No, we haven't talked about MJ the musical.
It's not going to be a dedicated episode, but like, what a blast. Like, what? hit after hit after hit.
But yeah, so it was similar to that. She was just like on a box.
No, what I wanted to say is this leads me to the next topic of conversation here, which like we've been having off and on, is that a show can't give regional theater when you're charging Broadway prices.
No, I know. It's hard. No, Mervish shows can be expensive. There are many deals for Mean Girls this time, and there are rush prices available, though I find Mervish Rush pretty expensive.
It's $59 for this.
$59 for this one, plus the $5 fee if you're not a subscriber. So, like, you're at $64 for a not guaranteed ticket that might be in the back corner, obstructed view, whatever. Yeah, I agree. And I also, like, not only that, but, like, charging those prices for non-equity show, which means that not even that it's of a lesser quality, but that the actors are not being paid as much. If you are charging the same prices and you are not paying your cast the same as when you are charging those exact same prices and paying the cast significantly more, like, that is what the discrepancy is. That is what the main issue with a non-equity show coming around is, that you're charging the exact same, but those profits are just being held by the production company or the theater owners and not being passed on to the cast.
Not even just the payment, but we're also dealing with people here that are not supported by a union at all. If something happens, there's zero protection. We're also talking about people that do not have health benefits because they're mostly American. And I think like something that's interesting to me, and it's kind of like, this kind of goes back to like the projections and like the cutting of dance breaks and the cutting of like certain moments of songs, is that like, so I'm going to see Mean Girls in the UK tomorrow, right? And then I'm coming back next week and I'm seeing Mean Girls in Toronto on Wednesday. And then if Mean Girls on Broadway was still running, I know someone that's going to see that next week. That's 3 different versions of the same production. And that feels strange to me, which I think is kind of like the conversation that we were having off the mic, which I think is important to bring back up on the mic, of when a show like Hadestown is currently running on Broadway, currently on a equity tour, and is about to enter into a non-equity tour, and how
the equity tour, not to interrupt, the equity tour closed in Toronto like 2 months ago.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And like, because it was the last stop was here, and they're reopening the tour non-equity, but you can still, there are 2 people who are going to be playing the exact same role, and one will be getting paid union rates and one will be getting paid non-union rates.
Well, one of them is Jordan Fisher, so he's getting even higher than union rates.
Well, yes, I'm sure, but like generally, let's say someone in the ensemble is doing the exact same thing in the exact same country.
Yep. Same state. Like, they're going to be going to New York
State sometime. and, you know, doing the exact same work and the exact same prices are being charged. Sometimes on tour, prices are even higher, I find.
Yeah.
And the actors are not being compensated in the same way, or being protected in the same way, or being taken care of in the same way.
Like, this isn't something that either of us can answer. It's kind of just of like, I don't know, like if anyone's listening that knows more about like actors' equity, it's kind of just like a why question mark. Like, I just don't understand. I understand having to do your time, for lack of a better term, and like get your status, but also like at what cost? Like, especially if a show is running where people are getting paid in full, or like a higher price.
This is not a critique to the actors or performers who are obviously very talented. Like, your union status is not an indication of talent in any way. But, and specifically for a show like this where the cast is really, really young, I consider a lot of these performers what I would call like pre-union, like getting their points together.
A lot of them just graduated from university.
A lot of them like have a lot of them don't have professional credits really in their bios, and like, yeah, this is a great first job. What the disconnect is with why is this non-equity when there was an equity production occurring also at the same time?
Yeah. The other thing here that like you can't answer, I can't answer, we kind of had this conversation earlier, but like, why is Mirvish bringing non-equity tours? And I know that they want to fill the downtime in between, because like the season is over as of, I think, on Sunday. Tina closed on Sunday, July 28th. So the 2023-2024 season is over. The 2024-2025 season will be beginning in September. But there's always, at least we've noticed in the last few years, been these like little teeny tiny
bonus shows, if you will.
Right, but the bonus shows have always been equity until this season. Chicago non-equity, Book of Mormon non-equity, Shrek non-equity, Mean Girls non-equity, and it just feels for a like mega super theater complex in the city of Toronto to bring like non-equity feels a little like icky to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I really do think it's because we are not in the United States, we're in a different country, but typically if a house houses union shows, it cannot house non-union shows.
Unless we're completely wrong here and the like protection is much better in Canada. Like, I actually don't know, but I would find that hard to believe. I don't think anyone's taking out like a separate like union for Toronto when these American actors come on tour. No. But I'd actually
someone in the comments, if you have more
literally
information
anybody
on this, like please tell us. Like, we're looking.
And again,
for
it's not just like
info.
Mirvish. It's like it's a commentary on non-equity tours in general, because I think there's a lot of the time like a miscommunication that equity means bad because the cast is bad, but that's actually not what we're talking about at all. It's more of the caliber of the cast is probably pretty good. It's just in terms of like payment and protection, and it's already a very low paying industry. So yeah.
Yeah. Like, I thought Aladdin was bad, and that was equity.
Was it? I don't think Disney does non-equity, but I don't know.
I don't know if they do. I think they do.
Well, speaking of Disney, the Disneyland Paris people have just become unionized, the cast members.
So we love that for them. Shout out to Disneyland Paris. You protested while we were there.
Yes, you did. Anyway, back on Mean Girls. I don't really have anything else to say about this show. Do you have more to say?
I'm good.
Do you have a favorite
I don't really
song?
have more to say.
Oh, we kind of talked about
okay,
that.
I actually do. My favorite song is Apex Predator, but I do want to shout out the choreography in one song because I thought this was so clever.
Not Stars, because there was no choreography.
Not Stars, because they cut my favorite choreography. Like, anyway, I used to do it all the time, like in my bedroom.
That was really good for audio listeners only. That was really good.
I was feeling the hand pump. The choreography that I loved that I thought was so clever, and I was like, this is Casey Nicholaw at his best, was in Where Do You Belong, where they're doing the lunch tray tap dancing, essentially. They're making the sounds of taps with the lunch trays. Like, I did not expect that or know that was happening, and I thought it was so clever, so smart, so fun. Like, what a creative way to use and like make those sounds. So that was probably like my favorite dance number, but I love Apex Predator. I think that's my favorite song in the whole show.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess
what's your favorite song?
I feel like it's probably Someone Gets Hurt. Oh my god, wait. Your favorite song is not Sexy? You were like obsessed with Sexy.
I love Sexy. I do love Sexy. I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But realistically, my favorite song is Apex Predator. If I'm listening to it, I'm listening to Apex Predator. We haven't even talked about I'd Rather Be Me, which is like a really big moment in the show.
I kind of hate it.
It's fine. I don't know. I don't like love Barrett always, so the cast recording is a little rough sometimes.
We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think the like underdeveloped friendship of Katie, Damien, and Janice is really like detrimental to Janice's character in this musical as a whole. I'm kind of like, why are you here? Other than to just like be
what do you
here?
have to do with the story that we're telling?
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Which is like, I felt the complete opposite. I mean, not the complete opposite, but I thought that Ali Carvalho did such a good job in the movie as Janice. And also Jaquel Spivey, who was Damien, loved him in that. They were actually the highlight of the movie for me. Really? But because of their duo, not because of the trio. So, yeah, I kind of agree. Barrett is a skrelter, as I like to call it, but sometimes it's a little too skrelty. And
love her in Heathers, though, speaking of.
Yeah, that's true. But I actually think that this show, I think she's talked about how this show has like damaged her voice a little bit because it's really high. A lot of the Janice songs are really high.
I remember when they iconically T. Boyich went on for Janice.
Yes.
Early in previews.
Oh my God, T. Boyich.
T. Boyich, I know. I pulled that name out.
Yeah.
She went on for Janice iconically early in previews. It was a role she did not cover. They were going to have to cancel the show because Barrett didn't have a voice, whatever. And I remember her describing it on a podcast. I think it was Broadway. She went on and said, basically, like, Janice is off stage for long periods of time, but then she comes and just, parks herself and screams. She's like a park and bark.
Yeah.
Janice is the role. Like, she's off stage for a lot of the time, and then she comes, she wails for 3 minutes, and then leaves again. So it's just, like, anytime she's on stage, she's really, like, belting. And yeah, I think we need more levels, maybe.
Yeah, because again, to compare the characterization to that original movie, like Lizzie Kaplan is so good as Janice in that movie because she really gives that character like agency and like there's levels to her. She's always like in the background like scheming or drawing or like paying attention to what everybody is saying so she can bring it up later, whereas I feel that's the other thing that I think is like maybe something that doesn't quite work with this musical is that Damien and Janice start kind of as the narrators, but then we lose that like very early. They kind of like introduce the show, but then it's like, okay, bye, see you at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they could have used them a little more to help us understand who like they are as characters, maybe.
I agree. As I say, they need to cut stop, but
they can cut stop by doing like
something else,
like a cautionary tale reprise, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because that would stop opens Act 2, right?
Yeah, it does open Act 2.
I also think, not to harp on Stop more than we already have, but the like stories that he tells in Stop are just like not good. Like it's not good.
It feels like it's trying to do Turn It Off in the Book of Mormon and
oh
Case
yes,
show.
It does. You're right.
And also like Gray Henson was in Book of Mormon, but it just doesn't work in the same way.
Yeah.
As Turn It Off does.
Yeah. Do you think that? Well, it's off Broadway. It's no longer on Broadway, but do you think that Tina would ever like put herself in this as like Miss Norbury? She'd have to sing, but like it would have been fun to do like a charity one night only performance when it was on Broadway.
It would have been funny if she did that, but no, I don't think she would. Also, the characterization of Miss Norbury, like Tina also nails it in the movie as this kind of like
it's so hard to do, yeah.
And again, it's just like a little too heightened in the musical what the Miss Norbury's doing.
They also, the adult characters, like, in general, are kind of, like, missing in this musical, for me, at least. Like, her parents in the original movie are so funny. Like, Katie's parents, they're so good.
You see them 2 times in the musical.
Yeah. And then even, like, Mr. Duval is, like, my favorite character in the movie.
So funny. Because, you know, Tina cast a bunch of SNL people on the show.
That's the problem. That's why I feel like it's a little too like sanitized, but then it's not. Yeah. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
You know, like Amy Poehler does so much with so little screen time in that movie.
Yes, she does.
She's like literally we talk about Mean Girls being so iconic, but probably the most iconic thing is Amy Poehler with the camcorder, like, in the audience doing the
it's like
choreography.
Created so many memes, like so many people have done that. Okay, final thoughts on Mean Girls, and then we'll rate it.
Final thoughts on Mean Girls. I was expecting to be pretty meh on it, but I actually had a really good time and I really enjoyed it, and I might recommend this to people, depending. I think for me, it just kind of like captures the kind of like silly tone of high school in a way that charmed me. And that's kind of my final thoughts on it.
Okay. And what are you going to rate it?
What about you, Tara? What am I going to rate it? I'm going to go 7 out of 10 pink polo shirts. Is that high?
For you, yeah.
I had a nice time.
Like
6 felt too low.
We haven't.
The 7 does feel a bit high, but it's okay.
Yeah, and you don't want to do a 0.5 because then it's out of
No.
more.
Then it's out of 20. So you got to commit to a number.
I'll say we haven't really, like, we've seen a couple shows that we haven't done full reviews on, and like Steph has really turned into a hater like recently on this podcast. So to hear a 7 is like kind of shocking.
I know. I had a nice time. Like, these are very, very random ratings. Like, they really, it's vibes based only. It's vibes only.
I should go back when we do our year in review and like go through all of your ratings to see like how across the board you were. Because you've given out a 3, you've given out a 10, you've given out a 7. Like, it's crazy.
What did I give a 3 to?
Probably Back to the Future.
I can't remember.
We gave it. Did we? I swear I gave a 2 to Tina the other, like, a couple weeks ago.
Oh, we really went in on Tina, actually.
I'm gonna do that.
I think
someone remind me, but I'm gonna for the year in review. We're gonna go through the. Oh, should we actually see what actually came? I mean,
see what we ranked like each.
It's not quite accurate to the full year because some of the stuff we saw last year, but we recorded this year. But like, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. My final thoughts are that I think it's fine. That's really it. I don't think it's good. I think it's kind of bad in moments, but mostly it's fine. And I wish they would have maybe fan served a little harder, but in a different way. I don't need movie quotes, but I want more characterization.
We don't need to be like Glen Coco, Glen Coco, Glen Coco.
I hate that. Cut that.
And then for Gershon Wiener.
Yeah. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. Burn books. Look, I bought merch when I saw it in New York because I really wanted the mug that said "You're like really pretty," just for my own life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would also recommend it. I think it's like if you're looking for a show that's not serious and you kind of just want to like have fun at the theater, then go see Mean Girls. And I guess specifically the non-equity tour because there's no projection. So I can't believe.
I really think it was elevated by the lack of projections.
Well, that's what Shar said. Shar has seen it with projections and without, and she said it was better without. And I'm just like, guys, take notes. Why haven't you been listening to me?
It's just like feels a little simpler. Feels a little
and maybe lower those prices. But that's really my main critique for all theater in general.
Yeah.
And with that, it's now time for Obsession of the Week.
My obsession this week is a book I read when we were on vacation a few months ago together. Due to jet lag, I stayed up all night reading one book.
Beside me, and I didn't even know.
I know, you were just dead asleep. Once More with Feeling, it's by an author named Alyssa Sussman. I've read another book by hers. But this book specifically ties in because it is about putting on a brand new Broadway musical. So, let me read the summary for you. This is a long summary, but we're going to do it.
That's okay.
Then, Katie Rose.
We have to stall because we need the cabaret review. So we're waiting for
Corey. We're waiting for Corey. Here's the summary. Then, Katie Rose is living the dream as America's #1 pop star, caught in a whirlwind of sold-out concerts, screaming fans, and constant tabloid coverage. Everyone wants to know everything about her and her boyfriend, Ryan Lenev, the hottest member of adored boy band Crush Zone. Katie loves to perform but hates the impossible demands of stardom. Maybe that's why she finds herself in the arms of another Crush Zone member, Cal Kirby. Quiet, serious Cal, who's always been a good friend to Katie, is suddenly Cal with the smoldering eyes and very good hands. One unforgettable night is all it takes to blow up Katie's relationship with Ryan, her career, her whole life. ... They also, like, there's a second part of the summary, but I need to mention that they met at, like, a stage door manor type camp.
And here's Steph is being like, this show is too risque for me, but then is reading the synopsis of this book where literally the line that you just read out loud is, he's good with his hands. So, like,
Well,
you're very confusing.
There was something kind of like, in my opinion, crass. Sorry, not to be like a Karen 50-year-old prude mom right now, but there was something crass about the
I don't like it
mascot
either, for the record.
with the giant belly bouncing
up
if
and
they've
down.
implied that Regina and Shane Omen are having sex inside it. Like, I'm sorry. I did not appreciate it. I didn't like it.
She
Okay,
likes
here.
tasteful sex scenes.
Exactly. I want taste. I want
Yeah.
tasteful.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, this is the second part of the summary, because it's in 2 timelines. Now, Kathleen Rosenberg is okay with her ordinary existence and leaving her pop star image in the past. That is, until Cal Kirby shows up with the opportunity of her dreams, a starring role in the Broadway show he's directing, and a chance to perform the way she's always wanted. The two haven't spoken since the joint destruction of their careers, and each of them blames the other, making their reunion a tense battle of wits and egos. Katie reluctantly agrees to the musical as long as she keeps her guard up around Cal, but rehearsals are long, those eyes still smolder, and those hands are still very good. Despite everything, Katie can't deny the chemistry between them. Is it ever a good idea to reignite old flames, especially if you've been burned in the past?
Wow.
So what's fun about it is they meet, when you meet the characters of like Kathleen and Cal, they meet at like a stage door manor type of camp, and they have a third friend who's like the writer of the musical, and then kind of 10-15 years later they all come back into each other's lives, and their friend has written the musical, Cal's directing it, and now Kathleen is going to be the star of it, and it's kind of a second chance, and you get to go through kind of the rehearsal, the preview, the out-of-town tryout, the Broadway opening process with all of them. And it's super fun, especially for like a theater insider to read. There were some things I was like, I don't know about that. But, you know, for the most part, I had a really good time. It was like...
Was it an equity production?
It was on Broadway, so yes. I can't remember the theater they said it was, but it was called... The production is called Riveted, and it's about like Rosie the Riveter. And like... Yeah, that was... The one thing that kind of like... maybe like didn't make sense to me, but was a little bit like odd, but they said chorus instead of ensemble.
Oh.
And I thought that was super interesting, because I was like, I would always say ensemble.
Is it American?
Over chorus. Yeah, it's American. I guess I just think of like a chorus as something different than an ensemble.
I feel like sometimes like British people would use the word chorus, so I was wondering if it was UK, but yeah, that is weird. I mean, you would say like the chorus girls, but you wouldn't call like everybody the chorus.
I guess I think of like, let's say an ensemble as like a group of actors who are maybe playing like a bunch of different characters in the background, whereas like a chorus is like a group of actors who are kind of like playing very similar characters, or just providing like a backdrop, let's say. I don't know. Something else interesting I think about this author, not even interesting, but I read another book of hers, and it was called, that I really liked as well, it was called Funny You Should Ask, and the main characters of both of these books are like blatantly Jewish women. And it's like part of their characters, even like the main character in the other book, I'm not going to pronounce her name because I'm not good at it, but she makes a big deal about like the correct pronunciation of her name.
How do you spell it?
So Chani. I know it's like, I can't do it.
Chani.
I think it's like, I would say Chani, but I think it's like supposed to be like
honey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or like hala. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with it, but it's like the main characters of both of these books are like, and I think the author as well, like explicitly like Jewish women, and it's part of their characters.
Is this the one that you read that's about the movie actor, which is the first one?
Yes, that is Funny You Should Ask, where the main character.
But that's the one that's supposed to be like Chris Evans.
It's inspired by a GQ article written about Chris Evans. This other book, Funny You Should Ask. Is this one
inspired by anything, or no? It's just
I don't think it's inspired by anything like specific in that way. I really enjoyed both of them. Both of them are really fun, I think. I think I liked Funny You Should Ask a little more. The kind of movie one, the movie star one, but
because
once
you
more
did read it at like 4:00 in the morning in Amsterdam. But
no, I just think it was like, I don't know, it was fun. It was sexy. It was fun. Like, I don't know what to say. It was fun. It was like, I don't know. It was like a little more giddy than this one. This one was a bit more like serious and had a lot more going on, I think.
Right.
But for the theater tie-in, absolutely Once More with Feeling by Alyssa Sussman. Highly recommend if you love a romance novel, if you want to read about theater. Super fun. Tara, what is your obsession this week?
Okay, so to bring this whole thing full circle, my radio station often plays for me songs from your favorite musical that you've never seen. Bring It On.
Wow. This
Which
does tie.
brings in our Taylor Louderman tie-in. So I was going to choose, because I had written it down from a long time ago, to talk about One Perfect Moment, because I think she sounds amazing on that song. Mm-hmm. But the song that's been served to me very often is Born to Do, which is just a really fun song. I like the... What is it? These Truman girls, they're superhuman girls. Like, it's just, it's cute. Here's a movie musical that a movie turned into a musical that I did see Bring It On, and I didn't really like it, but I feel like I didn't appreciate it because I wasn't who I am now. But it also had projections, and I hated those projections. So maybe, but the cheer stuff was so good.
I think that was one of those ones that went to Broadway
too soon,
but it was essentially a tour stop. Like, it was on tour, and the
so like
Broadway
the Wiz
run
right
was
now.
Essentially just the final tour stop. The Wiz, like Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, the Broadway one was essentially just a final tour stop.
Don't discredit Percy Jackson. We love
No, I'll never discredit The Lightning Thief. I love The Lightning Thief. I'll never discredit it. But
yeah, I think like going through this cast recording, like some of these songs are really good. And I think it's a really fun Lynn and Tom Kitt, right?
Yes, but let's say like One Perfect Moment, Lynn did not write One Perfect Moment. I think that's a Tom Kitt one.
Yeah.
I think they each kind of took...
You can hear the Lynn inspiration.
You hear Lynn. It's very clear. My favorite is Cross the Line.
I was going to say, that's such a good song. And then also kind of like randomly, because for anyone that doesn't know, this Bring It On is based on the... Oh my God, I don't know the title of the Bring It On movie that it is, but it's the one with like...
I don't know if it's...
It's the second... I think it's the second one.
Is it the second one? Well, it's definitely not the storyline of the first one. I always thought of it as...
it's the one that's like, I think it's the one with Solange.
I really have only seen the first one, I gotta be honest.
What? Why?
I always thought it was like, you know how all the Bring It Ons are like, they're all cheerleading movies? Like, this was just another installment. It's not based on one specifically. It's just another Bring It On installment.
I think it might be based on one specifically because the first one was not licensable to them. I had read a full article about this. They wanted to do first one, and then it wasn't, they couldn't buy the rights to it. So I think it's the one whatever the one that Rihanna sings Pon de Replay in the credits, because... Also very recently, Theater's Life, Kate Ranking posted a video being like, did anyone notice that the finale of Bring It On has the same kind of like 3-chord progression as like Pon de Replay? And I was like, oh my God, it does, which is like a really smart Lynn tie-in. Anyway, I think that...
I'm reading the summary and it does seem to be, but the character names are all different. So I think
they're different.
Loosely based on Bring It On, All or Nothing.
Yeah, is that the one with Hayden Panettiere?
Hayden Panettiere and Solange. You were right.
Steph, you gotta watch that movie. It's actually so good.
I'm sure it is. I've just never seen it.
It's so good.
Jake McDorman. I like him. Maybe I'll watch it.
It's really good. We'll see. The like Hayden Panettiere is fun in that movie. But yeah, I just think it's one of those shows that like, would I ever see this again on stage? Honestly, maybe. If it came through tour, I think it would be fun to see on stage. But I think going back and listening,
a community theater production of Bring It On.
They like don't do it because it's too dangerous, guys. Like, just if you're gonna do it, don't do the throws, the flyers. No. They should have brought it back though around when like cheer was so popular. It would have they could have really tied something in together. But yeah, I think it's like, I don't remember enough of it to remember that it was like a good show, but like revisiting this cast recording, I'm like, wow, some of these songs really good.
I love the cast recording. I'm a big fan.
My favorite right now is Born to Do, or What I Was Born to Do, from Bring It On the Musical. And I can't believe that we're about to end this episode without finding out what happened. Should we just like end it and then wait and then I'll insert
come back later?
Maybe. He's gonna be done in like 10 minutes. I'll do the SpongeBob a few moments later.
A few moments later.
No, but they've
oh my God,
canceling performances. Oh, Kari's here. I thought he was gonna jump into the StreamYard because send him the link.
Should I FaceTime audio him? Hello. Wait, Steph, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear. Hi, Kari.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We're going to insert this into the episode live on the podcast. Okay, so we've been teasing our entire Mean Girls episode that you are currently at Cabaret, and we've already discussed how upsetting it is that you saw this before both of us. So, what were your thoughts?
So I thought it was an excellent show. I'd never seen the movie. I only knew a little bit about the storyline and the plot. Eddie Redmayne is fantastic. He lives up to the hype.
Oh, so the thumbs down was a fake out.
It was a fake out. Eddie was excellent.
Wow.
Big lineup right now at the stage door to see everyone. It's going to be very interesting seeing Adam Lambert take the role, because while Adam Lambert's going to knock all the theatrical parts out of the park, the character of the MC takes an interesting turn that I don't want to spoil on the show if anyone hasn't seen it. That it's not something I'm not sure how Adam Lambert's going to occupy that. It'll be very interesting to see him do that. I think he can, but it's going to be a different turn for him. And so I think that's going to be very fascinating to see. Gail Rankin has the show stealing number in the second act. If I had to critique anything, I think Act 1 could be trimmed a little bit. It starts to meander just a bit. It starts to wear out its welcome a little bit. And the plot kind of falls into a bit of a standstill. But it very much picks up towards the end of Act 1, and then Act 2 is not really a dull moment. Act 2 is excellent. So if you're in New York, and if you can get to see Cabaret before Adam Lambert takes over from Eddie Redmayne, see it, because Eddie Redmayne's excellent. Even if you can't.
How was the seat?
And if you get to see it afterward, I'm sure Adam Lambert will be great. The seat was great. So it's theater in the round.
Yeah.
So there's not really a bad seat in the house. I was in the last row of, I guess what you could call orchestra, but there's basically this balcony section and then there's a lower section. Luckily, actually, I didn't have anyone in front of me, so I didn't have any obstructed view. I did find, and I'm not really sure how to express this geographically if anyone's looking for a ticket, I did find that they favored the opposite side of me a little bit more in terms of the performance, so I was getting a little bit of their back more throughout the show. It just happened to be luck of the draw. They favored the other side a little bit more. If you're lucky enough to sit in the first row, you'll definitely be targeted by the MC for some interaction. And I guess another thing to mention too, outside of the show itself, is that if you get there early, you're kind of escorted through the Cape Cod Club. They check you at the door to make sure you're 21 and put a stamp on your hand so that you get your free shot when you arrive. And it's very cool. You feel like you're entering kind of like an underground Berlin club. And then the theater itself, it's beautiful in there.
For the purpose of this podcast, rated out of 10.
Yes.
But you have to pick an object to rate it out.
Yeah, you have to pick an object to choose with it. So, like, if it's...
What do you mean?
For Mean Girls, I gave it a 5 out of 10 burn books.
Oh, okay. I will give this 8 out of 10 red party hats.
Yes, the red party hat.
Okay.
Wow.
Which also, if you're lucky enough, as you're coming out of intermission, about 5 or 6 people are selected from the audience to go up on stage and dance with the cabaret performers, and then you get to leave with a red party hat. So,
wow. I had not heard that. I did not know that.
So first row, I think go up late.
They get the charcuterie board also, I think, in the first row.
You bought that charcuterie?
There were drinks and food and stuff handing out to the first few rows. One thing I'll say that's very interesting with seeing this play now, or the show now, very topical in terms of current politics.
Yes.
So it's very topical. Oh, people are cheering for someone here.
Oh, you're still there?
Yeah. What is that? Is that Eddie Redmayne? It might be. I can't tell. Once again, his back is to me.
This on the ground reporting.
I know.
I know. I'm live on the ground reporting from Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah.
A much more intellectual review than we've given in the last 5 years of being on air.
Sure.
So I'm sure.
Thanks. Thank you.
But yeah, that's our obsession of the week. That's also our thoughts on, I was going to say Moulin Rouge, but that's not what we're talking about.
No.
On Mean Girls, the musical. Mean Girls is playing in Toronto at the Princess of Wales, Royal Alex? Which
Royal
one?
Alexandra.
The Royal Alexandra Theatre until August 25th. So you still have a few more days to see it if it's not already sold out. But literally at current time of record, like rush tickets were available today. So always check the Rush site on Murbish's website. And if you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can do that by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to leave us a comment and like the video.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2, and on TikTok at Off2Broadway. And yeah, leave us a comment there on Twitter or Instagram telling us what you thought of Mean Girls.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.